At the dinner party, the attendees, all members of the meeting, engage in spirited conversation while the Grand Duke quietly observes his surroundings. Amidst the ongoing discussion, someone within the group notes a significant improvement in his abilities. During the meeting, a fellow member promptly interjects, firmly asserting that the Grand Duke deserves full credit. This arouses the Grand Duke's curiosity, prompting him to seek more clarity. He begins to question whether everyone genuinely believes he merits all the praise, carefully studying their responses. After careful consideration, he aligns his perspective with theirs. Subsequently, Ben discreetly updates Dahain about the preparations, which prompts Dahain to invite everyone to gather, signaling an imminent revelation of something extraordinary. As a grand portrait of Dahain is brought into the room, the other attendees are left in astonishment, taken aback by the sheer size of the painting. They start to wonder if this magnificent work of art is destined for auction and potential purchase. Sensing the growing curiosity in the room, Dahain decides to take action. He rises from his seat, prepared to unveil the remarkable portrait of himself, a masterpiece meticulously crafted by Esther. With a swift gesture, Dahain removes the cover from the portrait, and as the others catch their first glimpse, their expressions transform in unison, evolving into a sudden and unanimous display of shock and awe. The painting's beauty and artistry render them speechless. A lively discussion ensues among the attendees, each expressing their curiosity about whether the portrait might have been intended to depict the Grand Duke himself. The attendees are mesmerized by the portrait's elegance and extraordinary craftsmanship, sparking a lively discussion about its mysterious creator. Speculations arise, with attendees pondering if renowned artists like Perka, Levin, or Rubin, the organizer of the recent Tertia exhibition, could be responsible for this unique masterpiece. The portrait exudes an almost palpable aura, and its viewers can sense a profound, holy power emanating from it. Breaking the suspense, Dahain reveals the true artist behind the masterpiece. He acknowledges the mentioned geniuses who have left their mark on the empire's culture and art, but surprises everyone by announcing that his daughter is the brilliant mind behind this remarkable portrait. Upon their inquiry, Dahain reveals that he recently adopted a child who holds immense importance to him and his two sons. He goes on to share his plans of hosting a party and extends an invitation to everyone present. Under the night's enchanting sky, Dahain feels the moment is perfect for a private conversation. He calls for Ben, who arrives slightly delayed due to his carriage wheel duties. Dahain expresses his gratitude to Ben for the courage he provided during the meeting. However, Dahain notices Ben's melancholic demeanor and decides to inquire further. As Ben gathers his thoughts, he asks Dahain for a favor and cautiously mentions that, upon a closer examination of the portrait, he had a revelation. Ben believes that Esther is actually the princess of Tertia and is taken aback by the depth of her divine power. He wonders how someone from a temple could possess such an extraordinary gift. Ben requests Dahain to ask Esther to create a portrait for Mr. Noah. Dahain realizes Ben's ongoing care for Noah and his desire to give him a portrait as long as he's alive. Dahain agrees to approach Esther about it, respecting her willingness to help. The following day, Dorothy presents Esther with a rapidly growing flower, revealing its sensitivity to divine power. Esther becomes concerned that if others discover her newfound ability, she might be confined to the temple once more. At the temple, Ravian's official designation as the next saint candidate is celebrated, and she dons the newly tailored official attire, marking her as a highly regarded figure. As she approaches a door, a man warmly greets her, and upon noticing the jar she carries, she explains it contains medicine for Saintess Cespia. The man deeply appreciates Ravian's kindness, and she graciously acknowledges his praise. Shortly thereafter, the man provides Ravian with the requested item and asks her to take good care of it. In a brief span, Ravian enters the room and informs Saintess Cespia of her arrival. Cespia, upon hearing her voice, immediately recognizes Ravian, creating a heartfelt moment of connection. Saintess Cespia remains reclined on her bed, motionless. Ravian enters the room and informs her about the medicine she has brought. She gently urges Cespia to rise and then expresses concern about Cespia's well-being. Cespia responds with uncertainty, voicing her fear that her body is nearing the end of its journey. She confides in Ravian, sharing that she feels as though the goddess is summoning her. Ravian, alarmed by Cespia's words, advises her not to speak in such ominous terms. Worried about Cespia's imminent departure, Ravian, with childlike innocence, inquires if it might be possible for the goddess to grant Cespia more time. Cespia can't help but chuckle at Ravian's innocence and humor. Ultimately, Ravian proceeds to administer the medicine to Cespia, embodying a touching moment of care and companionship between the two. As Ravian reaches for the medicine tray, a hint of suspicion crosses her mind. Suddenly, the gatekeeper arrives and informs Ravian that Duke Brayon, her father, has personally delivered these items for their temple, including the medicine. This revelation leaves Ravian contemplative. She realizes that under her father's arrangement and her own care, Saintess Cespia will enjoy a newfound level of comfort and support. With a sense of gratitude and responsibility, Ravian proceeds to prepare the medicine. She carefully gathers it and then approaches Cespia, instructing her to consume the entire dose. Meanwhile, at the Tertia Palace, Esther expresses her desire for as many seeds as possible to Dorothy. Dorothy promises to inquire with the gardener to fulfill Esther's request. This interaction sets the stage for Esther's involvement in a horticultural endeavor that could hold significance in the palace's future. Although the awakening of the Saintess has commenced, there remains a certain amount of time until it reaches completion. Esther reflects on the experiences of previous incarnations and estimates that, even without pinpointing the exact moment of awakening, it should occur approximately 6 months from the present. She understands that the power of the Saintess has the most profound impact on sentient beings, surpassing all else. In the midst of these considerations, Esther realizes that she can gauge the progress to some extent by attempting to bloom hyacinths. Prior to the awakening, her divine power was insufficient for such feats, and she had faced reprimands for her inability to do so. In a short period, the gardeners are taken aback by the sudden flourishing of numerous hyacinth flowers in the garden. Esther witnesses this development and contemplates that if things continue in this manner, she will fully awaken as the Saintess within a few months. The blooming hyacinths serve as a tangible sign of her growing divine power and impending role as the Saintess. Esther had plans to leave the Grand Duchy before getting caught at the temple, and this may hasten the time to leave. But Esther didn't plan to leave in such a hurry, and as Esther is convincing herself that she has to firm her heart once again, Dahain arrives and mentions to Esther that she has to be careful or else she would get hurt. Dahain, filled with concern, questions Esther about any recent incidents and offers to remove the tree if it's causing her distress. Esther reassures him that the tree isn't the issue. As Dahain observes Esther's reddening forehead, he becomes aware of the nurturing role he's taken on. He revisits the topic of removing the tree, prompting Esther to gesture toward the blooming hyacinths. Dahain suggests they continue their conversation elsewhere. After a while, Dahain inquires Esther about the unusual strength of her divine power, upon which Esther admits it hasn't always been this potent, and queries Dahain about his curiosity. Dahain's response revolves around the garden's hyacinths in full bloom, causing Esther to blush with guilt. This unexpected revelation weighs on her, and the conversation takes a more complex turn as they grapple with the implications of her blossoming powers and the secrets she holds. Dahain reassures Esther, telling her not to apologize and assuring her that it's not her fault. He then explains that the reason for relocating their conversation is to request a favor from her. As Dahain begins to elaborate on the details of his favor, he suddenly stops, his concern evident. He reflects on the potential danger of involving Esther in imperial matters at Noah's sanctuary. The thought of Esther facing punishment from the Empire if something were to go awry weighs heavily on him, causing him to hold his head in worry. However, before Dahain can express his doubts or reconsider, Esther surprises him by offering her willingness to fulfill the request. Her decision highlights her trust and dedication to him, even in potentially perilous situations. The conversation takes a significant turn as they delve into the implications of her agreement and the potential risks they might face together. Esther inquires if Dahain needs a portrait she has created previously. Dahain, concerned about the potential danger, warns Esther about the risks involved. Esther, however, dismisses his concerns, assuring him that there's nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Dahain is deeply worried about Esther as he has come to regard her as a daughter. As he prepares to leave, Esther stops him and expresses her concern about the situation at the temple. Dahain reassures her that he hasn't heard anything alarming, attempting to allay her worries. The following day, Esther is escorted from the carriage, and the driver directs her towards the cabin where she is to create Noah's portrait. This marks the beginning of her task, and she enters the next phase of her journey, filled with a mix of determination and uncertainty. The driver emphasizes to Esther that she must complete Noah's portrait within a tight 2-hour time frame before leaving. As Esther steps into the cabin, she confirms her initial understanding. It is indeed a sanctuary. The realization dawns on her that all the sanctuaries in the Empire are likely controlled by the temple, including this potentially concealed one. Suddenly, Esther becomes aware of a distinct drop in temperature as a cold breeze wafts through the cabin. Intrigued and somewhat unnerved, she investigates further, pinpointing the source of the cold air to a particular room. Esther's curiosity propels her to enter this room. As she cautiously steps inside, Esther approaches a bed and discovers a young boy lying there. Upon closer examination, she recognizes the boy as none other than Noah. A sense of familiarity washes over her, and her mind races to recall where she has seen him before. The unexpected encounter with Noah stirs up questions about their connection and the circumstances that have brought them together in this sanctuary, prompting Esther to delve into the mystery of their shared history. As Esther ponders where she has previously encountered Noah, she decides not to dwell on it, mindful of the ticking clock with just 2 hours to complete his portrait. Nevertheless, she can't help but feel a tinge of awkwardness since it's her first time secretly sketching a sleeping person. While diligently working on Noah's portrait, Esther can't help but notice his striking handsomeness, even with his eyes closed. In her experience, only Ravian surpasses him in beauty. She also admires the Grand Duke and his sons for their handsome appearances. Despite her determination to focus on the task at hand, Esther struggles to shake the feeling of familiarity regarding Noah. As he slumbers, she wonders if he were to open his eyes, it would provide her with a clearer image for her sketch. The mystery of Noah's identity and her connection to him keeps her mind occupied, making it challenging to maintain her concentration on the portrait. With growing concern about when Noah will awaken, Esther wrestles with thoughts of what to do as she realizes she may not complete the portrait in time. Despite her worries, Esther perseveres, determined to keep working on the sketch. As time passes, Esther begins to feel drained, her energy waning. She also notices that Noah's hand is exposed, and fearing it might be cold, she reaches out and holds his hand to provide some warmth. In a gentle whisper, Esther confides in Noah, expressing her curiosity about who he is and why he is alone in the sanctuary. Her worry stems from her own experiences of loneliness, particularly during her time at the temple. Esther empathizes with Noah's potential solitude and wishes for his swift recovery so that he won't have to endure loneliness any longer. Motivated by this empathy, Esther decides to share a small portion of her divine power with Noah, a gesture of kindness and connection in the midst of their mysterious encounter. Esther, still not fully accustomed to using her divine power, unintentionally expends a significant amount while attempting to share it with Noah. Realizing this, she decides to refocus on her portrait work. However, her concentration is disrupted when Noah suddenly awakens and firmly grasps Esther's hands. Inquisitive, Noah questions Esther about her identity, leaving her somewhat startled by his abrupt awakening and uncertain about how to proceed. In response to Noah's inquiries, Esther explains her purpose in the sanctuary, apologizing for inadvertently waking him. She shares that she had been waiting for him to open his eyes so she could capture his likeness more accurately. Noah, intrigued by Esther, asks for her name, initiating a conversation that holds the potential to unravel the mysteries surrounding their encounter in the sanctuary. Esther contemplates how much she should reveal about herself and the divine power she possesses, cautious yet curious about this unexpected meeting. Esther introduces herself to Noah, and upon hearing her name, he appears to recognize her. With a firm grip on her head and a delighted expression, Noah asks if she is there to draw him. Esther affirms her purpose, confirming that she's there to create his portrait. Noah quickly deduces that Ben must have arranged for Esther to draw his portrait. He learns that Esther has only 2 hours left to complete the drawing, with only his eyes remaining to be sketched. In response to this revelation, Noah, in a rather innocent manner, decides to close his eyes immediately, making it impossible for Esther to complete her work. He kindly suggests that Esther come back another time to finish the portrait. Esther is left perplexed by Noah's actions, wondering about the reasons behind his sudden decision to halt the portrait session. His behavior raises questions about his intentions and what might be going on beneath the surface, leaving Esther to ponder the mysteries surrounding Noah. As Noah persistently requests Esther to return later for the unfinished portrait, Esther becomes increasingly baffled by his behavior. She attempts to explain the true reason for her presence, but Noah repeatedly interrupts her, fixated on whether she will return. With a tight grip on Esther's hands, Noah shares the cause of his unusual circumstances. He confides that he has been afflicted with an incurable illness, leading him to reside in the sanctuary since birth. This isolation has left him friendless, a fact that saddens Esther. Upon hearing Noah's plight, Esther's expression reflects her sympathy. Noah expresses his profound gratitude for her presence, tightening his grip on her hands even more. The sanctuary, situated in an isolated location and concealed from the outside world, serves as a secret holy land. Noah's heart is uplifted by the fact that someone has finally come for him, bringing a ray of hope and companionship into his otherwise solitary existence. Esther clarifies her purpose, stating that she's there solely to paint Noah's portrait. However, she can't help but wonder how long Noah has been living in isolation, prompting memories of her own time at the temple when she desperately sought freedom. Observing Esther's introspection, Noah becomes curious and asks her what she's thinking about. Esther quickly deflects, claiming she's not thinking of anything in particular. Undeterred, Noah raises the topic once more, expressing his desire to see Esther again. Esther finds herself once more lost in thought, contemplating her next steps regarding Noah. Finally, she decides to reassure Noah, promising that she will inquire at the palace if she's allowed to visit again. With that, she begins to make her exit, leaving Noah with the hope of future meetings, and Noah is left with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty as Esther departs. As Esther reaches the door to leave, Noah expresses his eagerness to await her return with a warm smile, his anticipation palpable. Esther departs, pondering the possibility of friendship when they next meet, leaving behind a sense of hope for both of them. Meanwhile, in another setting, Ravian prepares herself to approach Saintess Cespia. However, upon entering the room, she is taken aback to find Cespia standing despite having been administered a heavy dose of poison. Ravian is astonished by this miraculous sight. In response, Cespia calls upon Ravian to bring the child who possesses the power of the goddess, emphasizing the child's role in defending the empire from impending calamity. This revelation marks a significant turning point in their circumstances, setting the stage for a new and crucial chapter in their lives. Cespia reveals that she has been a vessel for the goddess's manifestation, and Ravian has been listening to the voice of the goddess. Curious about the goddess's preference for the next saint, Ravian inquires Cespia about it. The goddess describes the next saint as someone at the bottom of the empire, characterized by rosy eyes like meadow flowers and gray-brown hair resembling the vast earth. This description intrigues Ravian. However, Cespia abruptly returns to consciousness, confused by what she has just said. She denies her previous words to Ravian, dismissing them as nonsensical sleep talk. This leaves Ravian in a state of uncertainty, as the revelation from the goddess's voice clashes with Cespia's confusion and denial. Cespia adds that it's too early for the arrival of the next saintess. She explains that a saintess is typically born into Duke Breon's family every 3 generations, as it's a sacred covenant between the goddess and the empire. Ravian, however, is left pondering whether Cespia's earlier words meant that she, Ravian, is destined to be the next saintess, or if Cespia was alluding to another individual. This ambiguity casts a shadow of uncertainty over Ravian's understanding of her role and destiny in the empire. In a flashback, Duke Breon carefully explains to a young Ravian that she is destined to become the next saintess, emphasizing that it is her purpose in life. Ravian, as a child, can only agree with her father's words, accepting her fate as the future saintess, believing there is no alternative future for her. In the present, Ravian has matured, but her determination to fulfill her role as the saintess remains steadfast. The Breon family has a long-standing tradition, dictated by an oath to the goddess, of giving birth to a saintess every 3 generations. This principle has been upheld since the kingdom's inception, reinforcing Ravian's conviction that she alone must be the saintess. While walking, Ravian encounters Cain, who informs her that he has relocated the gifts and letters from the madam. He also conveys the madam's deep concern for Ravian's well-being, underscoring the weight of Ravian's role and responsibilities as the next saintess. Cain shares a message from Ravian's father, indicating that he has business nearby and plans to stop by. He expresses anticipation regarding Ravian's results. Curious, Ravian asks Cain if there's anything else he has forgotten to report. Cain informs her that there has been no response from Noah for the past 3 months. He explains that due to deteriorating relations between the royal family and the temple, the priests have ceased their care for Noah. Noah suffers from a rare ailment that requires the spiritual power of the high priests for treatment. Without regular infusions of this spiritual energy, he is at risk of dying. Concerned about Noah's well-being, Ravian instructs Cain to return in 3 days to collect her reply for her mother. She also expresses her desire to visit Noah, indicating her intention to ensure his health and inquire about his condition. Cain, deeply concerned for Ravian's safety and the potential repercussions of her visit to Noah, warns her about the risks involved. He advises against her visiting Noah at this time. However, Ravian dismisses his advice, insisting that there is nothing wrong with her visiting her fiancé, Noah. She urges Cain to keep this decision a secret from her father, to which Cain reluctantly agrees. Ravian is resolute in her determination to do whatever it takes to help cure Noah's ailment. Meanwhile, within the sanctuary, Noah has improved significantly, feeling much better than before. Despite the numerous times he had received spirit power infusions in the past, what Esther did for him left him pleasantly surprised. Shortly after, Ben enters Noah's room and inquires to Noah about when he woke up, unaware of the extraordinary events that have taken place during Noah's slumber. Noah offers an apology to Ben for the worry he caused, only to discover that he has been asleep for a staggering 3 months. During their conversation, Noah admits to being aware of Ben's invitation to Esther to visit him, and he begins to believe that with Esther's presence, there may be no need for him to return to the temple. As the discussion continues, Noah learns that Esther is the child adopted by the Grand Duke. This revelation piques his interest and raises questions about how he can find a way to remain by Esther's side in the future. Noah begins to contemplate the possibilities of staying close to her and the circumstances surrounding their connection. Noah confides in Ben about her desire to reunite with Esther. Additionally, Ben informs Noah that Ravian has conveyed a message, stating that she plans to visit Noah on her next day off. In response, Noah asks Ben to relay her request to Grand Duke, urging him to allow Esther to visit once more. Furthermore, Noah contemplates ending his casual relationship with Ravian, pondering the possibility of pursuing a deeper connection with Esther. Ben updates Dahain, reporting that Judy has successfully enrolled in the Academy's short-term fencing training camp. He adds that Judy mentioned his intention to send a letter in approximately 3 weeks. Ben also shares news about a message from a teacher who wishes to meet Dahain in 2 days. Dahain responds with warm wishes, expressing his hope that Esther enjoys the forthcoming meeting. Observing Esther seated alone, Dahain notices her introspective state. Esther, in turn, is immersed in thoughts about her encounter with Noah. She makes a personal commitment to inquire about Noah's name during their next meeting. Unexpectedly, Dahain addresses Esther, informing her that he has some exciting news to share. He politely asks for her permission to join her for a brief while, to which Esther readily consents. Dahain proceeds to acquaint Esther with her new teacher, who happens to be an Academy valedictorian graduate. This teacher's role is dedicated to nurturing and enhancing students' skills. Esther is pleasantly surprised by Dahain's consistent care and expresses her gratitude while affirming her commitment to working diligently. In the hall, Dennis expresses his desire to study alongside Esther when the teacher arrives. Dahain questions Dennis about his preference for solo studying, emphasizing the benefits of focus, but Dennis insists that studying with Esther holds a unique value. A maid enters and informs Dahain that the teacher has arrived by carriage. Dahain promptly rushes to the lobby to greet the teacher. The teacher introduces himself as James Griffith, and Dahain invites him inside. Dahain proceeds to introduce Esther and Dennis to James. Dennis mentions his twin brother, Judy, and explains why Judy is not present. James proposes to Dahain that he will conduct a trial class that day and discuss the contract at a later time. Dahain guides James to the classroom, and during their journey, James suggests that the Grand Duke should also consider attending the class. Dahain reaffirms his role as the evaluator of James' teaching skills, and Esther and Dennis join the class. As the lesson unfolds, Dahain notices that Esther and Dennis have grown close over time, developing a strong connection. James begins his teaching by delving into the history of the Austin Empire, guiding the students through significant events and key figures that have shaped their nation. As he approaches the end of his lecture, James tantalizingly reveals that the next class will explore the origins of the 4 families pivotal to the Austin Empire. Eager to expand their knowledge, Esther and Dennis eagerly request more content. James happily obliges, restarting his class to satisfy their insatiable thirst for learning. Responding to their enthusiasm, James happily restarts his class, ensuring that their thirst for learning is quenched. Esther ponders the fascinating nature of acquiring knowledge, and it's evident that Dennis shares her enthusiasm. After a month, Judy receives a warm welcome from Delbert. Delbert is keen to hear about Judy's experiences at the Academy's fencing camp. Judy describes it as challenging but enjoyable. In return, Judy asks Delbert about the well-being of Esther, Dahain, and Dennis. Delbert assures him that they are all doing very well, and he takes pride in noticing Judy's growth during his absence. In the midst of their conversation, Judy informs Delbert that there's a specific place he needs to visit before returning to the mansion. Curious, Delbert inquires Judy about this destination, upon which Judy reveals that he has a debt to settle. This exchange between Judy and Delbert highlights their close relationship and Delbert's interest in the well-being of Esther, Dahain, and Dennis. It also introduces an element of intrigue as Judy mentions the debt he needs to address. At the mansion, Dorothy is recounting to Judy what happened when she took Esther to the garden, and she describes how Sebastian treated Esther. Judy, upon hearing this, starts feeling guilty for not being present when Sebastian belittled Esther. He decides to go to a gathering place and inquire about Sebastian's whereabouts from everyone there. Judy eventually approaches a boy who is known as Sebastian's loyal follower and asks him about Sebastian's location. Meanwhile, Sebastian is sitting on a sofa, relieved that Judy was away at a training camp. However, he's growing increasingly anxious now that Judy has returned and seems determined to confront him. Sebastian acknowledges that Judy always likes to assert himself as the one in charge. When the butler comes to inform Sebastian about Judy's request to see him, Sebastian contemplates whether he should delay and avoid dealing with Judy altogether. Suddenly, Sebastian hears Judy's loud voice demanding that he show himself. In no time, Judy bursts into the room, gripping Sebastian's loyal follower tightly. Upon reaching Sebastian's room, Judy asks Sebastian if he has something to confide in him. However, Sebastian, on the other hand, is scared to death and unable to say anything. As their conversation continues, Judy reiterates his knowledge of Sebastian's disrespect towards Esther. He questions Sebastian about why he wasn't at home when this incident occurred. Judy points out that Sebastian doesn't appear to fear the consequences of his actions and seems unapologetic. Realizing that his servants are witnessing his humiliation, Sebastian's frustration boils over, and he attempts to retaliate by loudly asserting that Esther doesn't even share the same hair color as Judy. However, this attempt to deflect blame only serves to intensify Judy's anger. Sebastian's comment doesn't sway Judy in the slightest, and he becomes even angrier than before. Judy proceeds to physically confront Sebastian, hitting him in his frustration. In the midst of this confrontation, Judy takes the opportunity to explain to Sebastian that Esther is also hurt when subjected to hurtful words, just like Sebastian is. This revelation underscores the gravity of Sebastian's actions and forces him to confront the emotional impact of his disrespectful behavior towards Esther. Judy, reflecting on his own past behavior, realizes that he used to be indifferent to hurting others, but Dorothy's revelations about Sebastian's hurtful actions towards Esther have changed him. He can't shake the feeling of guilt for having called Sebastian over that day, which led to Esther hearing those insults. Judy also regrets breaking his promise to Esther, knowing that it left her heartbroken. Judy firmly tells Sebastian that he must apologize to Esther for his hurtful words. After some persuasion, Sebastian reluctantly agrees. With his task complete, Judy decides it's time to go see Esther. Meanwhile, Esther is preoccupied with the idea of finishing her portrait of Noah. She contemplates whether to ask the hind for another opportunity to visit him. Her thoughts drift back to her initial interaction with Noah during her first visit, but she quickly refocuses on the assignment Mr. James has given her. Suddenly, Esther hears loud voices from outside and becomes curious. She decides to investigate the source of the commotion. Esther is taken aback as she witnesses a chaotic scene outside. A man has been bitten by a snake that seems to have emerged from the Tertia mansion's garden. A group of people have rushed to help the victim, attempting to provide aid. Intrigued and concerned, Esther steps out of the mansion to get a closer look at what is unfolding. She peers through a side wall and, to her astonishment, gazes upon the snake that everyone is talking about. It dawns on Esther that she recognizes the snake, and a sense of recognition or familiarity washes over her. Esther is startled to find that she can somehow understand what the snake is communicating. She learns that the snake is pregnant, which is why it attacked people to defend itself. Esther is now faced with a moral dilemma and contemplates what she should do next. However, her immediate concern is to help Hans, the man who was bitten by the snake. Suddenly, Dorothy appears behind Esther, cautioning her not to approach the situation and urging her to go back inside. Esther, inquisitive and surprised, asks Dorothy if it was Hans who made a donut for her, to which Dorothy confirms. On the day Esther fainted with a fever due to her apparition as a saintess, the servants at the Grand Duke's mansion cared for her in numerous ways. Amid the outpouring of affection from people, a couple visited Esther, and the husband presented her with beautiful pink-colored roses, wishing her good health. Among those who showed care and consideration, Hans, aware of Esther's love for desserts, secretly gifted her a variety of homemade treats. Esther's realization of how much Hans cared for her on that day overwhelms her with gratitude, making her feel compelled to take action. Ignoring Dorothy's warnings, Esther suddenly starts running toward Hans, despite the gathered people's repeated warnings about the snake in the vicinity. Esther assures them that she'll be fine and remains determined to approach Hans. As Esther reaches Hans, the people continue cautioning her to stay away from the snake. Esther, undeterred, chooses to stay put. She shifts her focus to the snake, recognizing its fear. Esther reassures the snake that the people present mean no harm. Remarkably, her words have a calming effect on the snake, which begins to settle down. Esther requests a basket, and once it's handed to her, she gently places the snake inside. The onlookers are utterly astonished to witness Esther effortlessly controlling a venomous snake, a sight that defies their expectations and leaves them in awe. Esther contemplates how to help Hans, reflecting on her past experiences of being abandoned by others when she needed assistance. However, she acknowledges that she is different from those who have left her behind and possesses a kind and compassionate nature. With determination, Esther decides to use her healing abilities to aid Hans. As she focuses her powers on his leg, she realizes that, unlike previous situations, this time she can genuinely help. To the astonishment of everyone present, the venom's effects vanish, and Hans' leg is healed. Esther, relieved to see her healing magic work successfully for the first time, stands up and announces that she will take care of the snake. Despite Hans' warnings about the danger, Esther pays no heed and continues on her mission. Once Esther departs, the group of people starts discussing the miraculous healing they witnessed. Hans, on the other hand, feels a deep sense of gratitude for being healed by Esther, understanding the extraordinary nature of the help he received from her. Hans happily informs the curious onlookers that his foot feels completely fine, and he even feels energized, as if he could run at that very moment. However, he realizes that he forgot to express his gratitude to Esther for her remarkable assistance. On the other hand, Esther is concerned that her extraordinary abilities might have frightened the people witnessing the healing. She worries about the impression she might have left on them. Meanwhile, the people gathered behind Esther are engaged in a discussion. They acknowledge that Esther could have simply left the situation, but instead, she chose to help Hans. They are impressed by her kindness and selflessness. After deliberation, they decide to show their gratitude by preparing donuts to offer to Esther as a token of their appreciation for her compassion and assistance to Hans. Dennis observes the remarkable scene unfolding before him, where Esther has just performed healing magic. This revelation prompts him to recall the book he had given Esther earlier. He quickly searches for the book and eventually locates it. As Dennis reads through the book, he comes across information stating that the goddess possesses the ability to communicate with animals. This newfound knowledge leaves Dennis deep in thought. He recognizes the incredible power of a saintess, considering it far superior to other abilities, and particularly notes the potency of the saintess healing abilities, often referred to as the salvation of the empire. Dennis starts to realize that his suspicion about Esther receiving help related to the book he gave her wasn't unfounded. As Dennis reflects on the paintings Esther created, he initially feels a sense of unease but soon comprehends that it's a consequence of Esther's status as a saintess. He begins to accept that the contents of the book must be true and speculates that Daheim might also be aware of this extraordinary truth. Dennis is left in awe and somewhat apprehensive about the profound implications of Esther's newfound powers and status. Dennis's mind swirls with questions and uncertainty. He ponders whether Daheim adopted Esther because of her potential as a saintess. He's aware that the current saintess, Cespia, is alive and well, but he's perplexed by the unprecedented situation of having two female saints in the same generation. Dennis speculates that perhaps the temple is unaware of Esther's saintly abilities, and he contemplates whether his father knew about this secret. Deeply concerned about Esther's future, Dennis is determined to ensure her safety. He doesn't want her to be taken away once the temple discovers her powers. To protect his sister, he resolves to study the book he gave Esther diligently, believing that it may hold the key to helping her navigate this unique situation. Meanwhile, Esther, still focused on the snake, seeks a promise from it not to harm anyone in the vicinity, as it could jeopardize her own efforts to help the snake. Esther decides to keep the snake, taking on the responsibility of caring for it. Dorothy informs Esther about her intention to clean the first floor and offers assistance if needed. Esther, grateful, agrees and promises to call if she requires help. Curious about the snake, Esther engages in a conversation, asking about its origin and whether it wants to live with her. She decides to name the snake Bam Bam and kindly requests its obedience. Esther then notices the mark on her hand, the sign of her awakening as a saintess. It has been gradually appearing since she fainted, now consistently visible. However, it hasn't fully awakened yet, leaving Esther unharmed for now. She decides to take a rest until dinner is ready, embracing this moment of tranquility amidst the day's unusual events. As Dorothy continues cleaning, a sense of concern gnaws at her, and she realizes she shouldn't have left Esther alone. She approaches Esther and is delighted to see her sleeping peacefully in an adorable manner. Dorothy decides to quietly leave her be, understanding that Esther must be exhausted after the day's events. She exits the room, allowing Esther to rest. Night falls, and Ravian pays a visit to Noah. She expresses surprise that Noah hasn't yet received the holy magic. Noah responds with confidence, asserting that he's still the prince of the empire and can find an alternative solution, no matter how weak he may currently be. Noah goes on to refer to Ravian as a mere downgrade candidate, but she firmly rejects that label and asserts her role as the successor saintess. She addresses Noah as the prince of the Austin Empire and drops a bombshell, revealing that she's also his fiancée. In response to Ravian's statements, Noah calmly reminds her that she's the successor because she's the daughter of Breon, and he points out the generational tradition within House Breon, where every 3 generations, a saintess is born due to a promise from the goddess. Ravian, with a touch of sarcasm, acknowledges Noah's knowledge of this fact despite his time in slumber. She reflects on her upbringing, recounting how she was relentlessly groomed by her father, Duke Breon, with the singular purpose of becoming a saintess. Ravian asserts that in the entire empire, no one is as suitable as she is to become the next saintess, underlining her conviction and belief in her destiny and abilities. Noah gently reminds Ravian of the old saying, "Greed is deep." He expresses concern that her persistent desire for things that aren't rightfully hers might lead to future regrets. However, Ravian appears to take this criticism with some resistance. She counters by emphasizing that, as a saintess, there's practically nothing she can't obtain. Noah simply acknowledges her point. Their discussion takes a turn when Noah mentions that their engagement had already been dissolved when he fell ill. Ravian, however, disagrees, asserting that the engagement cannot be broken solely because Noah wishes it. As they delve into this matter concerning their engagement, Noah maintains a surprisingly cheerful demeanor. Ravian notices his smile and calls him out for appearing so lighthearted during such an important conversation, expressing her displeasure with his seemingly casual attitude. Noah asserts that he doesn't care about Ravian's holy magic and reiterates that, as the prince of the empire, he can have access to holy magic whenever he desires. This statement underscores his confidence. Ravian, however, is bewildered by Noah's newfound self-assurance and vents her frustration by stating that his ailment will ultimately lead him to her. But just as she's saying this, Noah interjects, probing Ravian's beliefs by asking if she believes she will be the next saintess. Ravian suddenly recalls a past instance when Cespia, during her sleep, mentioned the appearance of the next saintess. This recollection holds significant implications for their current conversation. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Judy learns about Esther's unexpected visitor, a snake, causing a commotion in the garden. Delbert informs Judy about the incident, and Judy expresses frustration and concern over why no one had intervened, given the danger posed by the snake. Delbert explains that Esther had taken it upon herself to handle the situation with determination. Determined to check on Esther, Judy decides to pay her a visit. Upon entering her room, he discovers her peacefully asleep. Not wanting to disturb her, he tiptoes quietly. However, as he approaches, he is perplexed to see Esther sleeping on the floor instead of her bed. Wishing to ensure her comfort, Judy gently attempts to lift Esther from the floor and place her on her bed. Yet, as he draws closer to her, he suddenly becomes aware of the snake's presence nearby. Fear overwhelms him, and he urgently shouts to Esther, fearing for her safety, imploring her to get out of harm's way. The room transforms into a scene of shock and alarm as Judy reacts to the unexpected and perilous situation. Judy's loud exclamation startles Esther, leading her to be awake, and she quickly assesses the situation. Calmly, she asks Judy to calm down and assures him that there's no need to panic. Esther proceeds to explain to Judy that the snake is actually her pet, and introduces it as Bam Bam. She reassures Judy that Bam Bam won't bite anyone anymore and kindly asks him not to worry. However, Judy, in disbelief, can't help but question Esther about the unusual choice of having a snake as a pet. His skepticism is apparent as he tries to make sense of the situation. Judy questions Esther about bringing a snake into the house and expresses his concern that it might cause trouble. He also notes that the snake's size suggests it's not an ordinary one. Esther, however, assures Judy that Bam Bam is obedient and requests that he not stand so far away. As Judy cautiously approaches, he asks Esther if the snake truly obeys her. In response, Esther commands Bam Bam to go to sleep, demonstrating her control over the snake's actions. Impressed by Esther's ability to command the snake, Judy acknowledges her talent. Their conversation then shifts, and Esther learns that Judy has recently returned home. She realizes that she's the first person he has visited since his return, indicating a special connection between them. Esther voices her concern about whether Dahain will permit her to keep Bam Bam as a pet. Judy, assessing the situation realistically, believes it's highly unlikely that their father will allow Esther to keep the snake due to its potential danger. This realization prompts Judy to question Esther about her continued use of Grand Duke when referring to their father. Esther explains that it's because she's not yet accustomed to calling him by any other name. Judy's concern deepens. He worries that Esther might not truly consider them her real family. Determined to address this issue and strengthen their bond, Judy decides to share his idea with Esther. As time passes, Judy finds himself seated at the table, enjoying a meal. He begins to recount his experiences at the training camp, proudly showing off his newly developed muscles and increased height. Dennis, expressing his admiration, suggests that he should have joined the training camp as well. Judy playfully responds, asserting that Dennis wouldn't have lasted even 3 weeks in such a demanding program. Despite the light-hearted banter, Judy's concern about Esther's sense of belonging lingers in the background. While at the table, Esther grapples with the dilemma of what to do about Bam Bam, the snake. To her surprise, Judy takes the initiative and announces to the family that Esther has something to share. After some encouragement from Judy, Esther summons her courage and decides to broach the subject with Dahain. Esther gathers her resolve and asks Dahain if she can keep an animal, specifically a snake, as a pet. Dahain, inquisitive, asks if it's a new species of snake that she wants to raise. Esther clarifies that it's a typical snake and not some unique or exotic variety. With this description, Dahain immediately realizes that the snake in question is likely venomous. He promptly declines Esther's request to keep it as a pet, concerned about the potential danger it poses. Esther persists in her belief that the snake isn't dangerous and that she can control it effectively. However, Dahain remains skeptical, emphasizing the inherent difficulty in managing a serpent, even for skilled snake trainers. He reiterates his concern about the snake's danger and firmly states that he cannot allow Esther to keep it as a pet. Amid this dilemma, Judy encourages Esther to put their plan into action. He had previously explained to her how to approach Dahain if her request was denied. Esther takes a deep breath and, for the first time, affectionately addresses Dahain as Daddy. She acknowledges his caring nature and gently pleads once more for permission to keep the snake, emphasizing that it's just for this one time. As Esther utters these heartfelt words, she can hardly believe that she has finally referred to Dahain as Daddy. It was Judy's suggestion, recognizing that Dahain would appreciate being addressed with such affection by Esther. The outcome of this emotional plea now lies in Dahain's hands, and Esther anxiously awaits his response, hoping that her endearing term for him will sway his decision. A palpable tension hangs in the air at the table following Esther's recent address of Dahain as Daddy. To break the silence, Dahain assures Esther that she hasn't done anything wrong and kindly requests her to continue referring to him as Daddy from that moment onward. The image of Esther's eyes, filled with a sense of fragility and the fear of disappearing from the world, remains vivid in Dahain's mind. It's a stark reminder of her troubled past. Yet, in this moment, a child with such a history has willingly called Dahain Daddy. This realization touches Dahain deeply, and he senses that Esther is slowly opening up to him. With a heartwarming gesture, Dahain grants Esther's request to keep the snake as a pet. However, he also cautions her to be exceptionally careful around the animal, emphasizing that it is a cold-blooded creature. Esther agrees obediently. Dahain, seemingly delighted by the turn of events, requests Esther to call him Daddy once more. Esther complies, and Dahain expresses his genuine happiness at hearing her address him in this affectionate manner again. Esther remains at the table, her head bowed in shyness, still adjusting to the new term of affection she's been encouraged to use. Meanwhile, Dahain announces that he has some business to attend to and prepares to leave the mansion. However, he pauses for a moment, taking a deep breath and finding a sense of relief. When Ben inquires to Dahain about the reason for his mood, Dahain shares the joyous news that Esther has just addressed him as Daddy. Dahain reflects on how it feels like the long sealed door to Esther's soul has opened just a crack. His emotions overwhelm him, and he appears to enter one of his occasional bouts of introspection. Observing Dahain's emotional state, Ben recognizes that Dahain has once again become lost in his deep thoughts. Nevertheless, he acknowledges that Esther's presence at the Tersha mansion has injected a livelier atmosphere, and he shares this sentiment with Dahain, who wholeheartedly agrees. Dahain seeks confirmation from Ben regarding the discovery of the diamond mine. Once Ben confirms it, Dahain expresses his intention to give the diamond to Esther as a gift. However, Ben raises concerns about the pressure Esther might feel upon receiving such a precious gift. Dahain acknowledges the validity of Ben's point but remains determined to proceed with his plan. He requests that Ben bring the necessary documents to his office so that he can officially name the diamond mine after Esther. Meanwhile, Esther sits in the garden, contemplating her day's schedule. Unexpectedly, Hans arrives with 2 other men and asks Esther if she can spend some time with them. Esther inquires to Hans about his foot, to which he replies that it's fine. Esther breathes a sigh of relief when she learns that Hans' foot is fine. Hans then presents a cake that he has prepared for Esther, expressing his gratitude for her help. Esther is deeply moved by this display of kindness and is overwhelmed with happiness. In this new life, she is treated with gentleness and care, a stark contrast to the rejection and hatred she faced in her previous life. Overcome by her emotions, Esther begins to cry tears of joy. Esther indulges in an unhealthy amount of cake. Dorothy steps in to caution her about overindulgence, reminding her that it could be troublesome. Shortly after, Dennis enters Esther's room and discovers her enjoying the cake given to her by Hans. Esther asks Dennis why he's looking for her, to which he replies that he wants to see Bam Bam, the snake. Esther agrees and leads Dennis to the room where she keeps the snake. Upon seeing Bam Bam, Dennis realizes that the snake is quite large. Concerned for Esther's safety, he advises her to handle Bam Bam with care, as it appears to be a venomous species. Dennis goes on to explain that this snake is one of the most poisonous among all species, emphasizing the need for Esther to exercise caution in raising it. Esther acknowledges Dennis's instructions and agrees to be careful with her new pet. Dennis notices that Esther seems to have something on her mind and encourages her to share her thoughts with him. He makes it clear that he came to see her for this reason. As he prepares to leave, Dennis leaves the door open for Esther to confide in him. Esther is left pondering why everyone has been acting so affectionately toward her on this particular day. She confides in Bam Bam, explaining that her tears aren't tears of sadness but tears of happiness, brought on by the kind words and gestures from those around her in this new life. She had initially believed that the happiness she was experiencing was temporary, almost like an illusion or a dream that she would eventually have to wake up from. Esther recalls the dark days when she was discovered to be a saint and was forcibly taken away by the temple, imprisoned and isolated. In those bleak moments, Esther contemplated ending her own life. However, her perspective has now drastically changed. Esther desires to continue living because she has found a loving family in the Tertius. The abundant love and support she has received have made her cherish life, and she no longer contemplates suicide as she once did. While Ravian was once the driving force behind her desire to give up on life, Esther's newfound identity as Esther Tertia has instilled in her a determination to live. She is not only determined to survive but also to create more happy memories with her newfound family. Esther aspires to become a true member of the Tertia family, and perhaps in doing so, she can eventually find a way to exact her revenge on Ravian. A meeting is convened at the temple, and it's noted that the Duke of Branons, who hasn't attended for quite some time, is in attendance. The Duke of Branons is invited to join the meeting, and the proceedings commence. High Priest Christopher initiates the discussion by addressing the pressing issue of Saint Cespia's deteriorating health. Christopher emphasizes the gravity of the situation and informs Priest Lapis that even the holy magic of high-ranking officials and the holy fire have proven ineffective in curing Cespia's illness. Christopher delivers the grim news that Cespia has only 1 more year to live. Recognizing the urgency of the situation and the impending transfer of power to the royal family if a solution is not found quickly, Priest Lapis swiftly instructs the other priests to implement their plan. This plan involves the selection and education of young girls who are potential candidates to become the next saintess. In addition to this directive, Priest Lapis addresses the ladies of the Brannon family who are present at the meeting. Ravian, too, is among those gathered at the meeting table. During the meeting, the priests identify Lady Ravian of the Duke Brannons as the next candidate to become the saintess. Esther ventured deeper into the sanctuary, where she was suddenly met with an unfamiliar voice inquiring about her identity. At the sanctuary, Esther encounters Palin, Noah's butler, who is familiar with her. They exchange introductions, and Palin suggests they enter together. During their walk to Noah's room, Palin reveals that Noah is currently asleep for personal reasons and thanks Esther for her care. Upon entering the room, Esther finds Noah sound asleep. Palin informs her that he will leave her alone with Noah, and instructs her to use a button if she needs assistance. With Palin's exit, Esther is left pondering her course of action. She realizes that, once more, she cannot work on the portrait since Noah's eyes remain closed. Deeply concerned about Noah's ailing health, conceives the idea of using her healing powers to aid in his recovery. She gently takes hold of Noah's hand, her mind awash with thoughts of whether her abilities can rouse him from his slumber. As she channels her power, she experiences an unfamiliar sensation, a sudden depletion of her energy reserves. To her astonishment, Noah stirs and utters her name in a faint voice. With Noah now awake, Esther explains her purpose in being there, to fulfill her promise of creating a portrait of him. Her artistic talents are devoted to bringing his likeness to life. Esther's request for Noah to sit up, enabling her to sketch him more effectively, is met with compliance. Yet, as they converse, she reveals her intention to complete the portrait on the very same day. Seizing the moment, Noah takes the initiative and expresses a wish, seeking a favor from Esther. He leads her to a secluded and enchanting location where they can converse in tranquility. The place's natural beauty enraptures Esther, leaving her in awe of its serene allure. Her admiration for the surroundings further enhances the connection between them as they embark on a conversation that may alter their destinies. Additionally, Noah provides his name to Esther and suggests engaging in a comfortable conversation, to which Esther consents. In response to Esther's inquiry, Noah reveals that his terminal illness often confines him to prolonged periods of sleep. He then broaches the topic of the curse of gods, a condition inherent in all living beings on Earth. He explains that while living, it is morally acceptable to utilize one's life force. However, the curse of gods operates by depleting vitality the moment an individual falls ill, and there exists no divine power capable of substituting for this vital energy. It is a rare disease that cannot be endured for long, and eventually it leads to death. And so, Esther mentions that she read about this disease in a book, and this is the first time that she has met someone with the disease. Soon, Noah mentioned that if he doesn't receive divine power, then his vitality will be burned and he would die. Esther begins to understand why she feels drained around Noah, realizing it's related to his illness sapping her divine power. As the conversation continues, Noah confides in Esther, revealing that due to his illness, he was abandoned by everyone, making her the only one who came to his aid. Grateful for her support, Noah musters the courage to ask a favor from Esther. When Esther inquires to Noah about the nature of this favor, Noah reassures her that it won't be a demanding task. With a deep breath, he expresses his heartfelt desire for Esther to remain by his side in the future. Noah's request is not for physical labor but rather for her companionship and presence, revealing his growing feelings for Esther and his need for her support during his illness. And that wraps up another thrilling recap. But the adventure doesn't end here. Prepare to be shocked by our second recap's unexpected plot twists and witness the evolution of your favorite characters. Subscribe to our channel if you want more twists, turns, and heart-pounding stories. Stay tuned for our next recap.